All right, welcome back. We are in session number 3 of the financial coaching program, Money Ain't the Problem. And again, my name is Will Smith. I am the managing partner of Innovative Financial Solutions Consulting Group. We do financial planning, wealth management, all those types of things. And I'm the author of the book, Money Ain't the Problem, What We Do With It Is. How to live your best financial life, which is what this financial coaching program was inspired by. And so now in lesson number 3 or session 3, we're talking about how to fix my money problems. That's why I started off with understanding money in session number 1. It is important to understand that money is a resource if you're going to fix your financial problems. It's important to have the right mindset about money and the fact that money does not define you. It's important to understand in session 2, which we talked about, what causes financial problems. Because if session number 1 and session number 2 weren't accepted, it's going to be very, very difficult to fix your financial problems. Because I have to acknowledge my shortcomings. If I have a lack of discipline, as we talked about in session number 2, or if I think that money is a way to define me and that it's power, and I go out and spend money on a $70,000 car that I really can't afford, but because my self-esteem is not where it needs to be, and this car helps me to have an image that makes me feel good about myself, because I don't feel good about myself if I'm driving around in a Kia, then that's a problem. And so understanding these things are pivotal in order to fix my financial problems. And then after I acknowledge my shortcomings, I got to be willing to get help. It's okay to get help. Like, it's cool now, it's almost a badge of honor now for people who are dealing with mental health issues to come out publicly and say, I got mental health issues, it's okay to be broken. That's kind of cool now, right? But you don't hear people talking about that when it comes to money. People don't make those kind of concessions when it comes to money. People don't say, yeah, I'm really not good at managing money. Yet we know that that's true. We know that athletes and entertainers and famous people, that statistically, many of them have significant financial issues, especially once they're no longer generating the same level of revenue that they was in their prime. For example, let's just choose professional athletes. Basketball players, to the tune of about 75 to 80%, I don't know what the exact number is right now, they are about 5 to 7 years after leaving the sport, they are dealing with significant financial challenges as opposed to when they were playing. And this is after earning millions and millions and millions of dollars. And there's been a lot of public stories about athletes and all this kind of information, so I don't need to go deep off into that. Same thing like lottery winners. People who win the lottery are statistically worse off financially 5 to 7 years after winning the lottery for hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars than they were before. And that means that they didn't get help. And so acknowledging my shortcomings and being willing to get help is very important in this whole process of fixing my finances. The other thing that I have to do is I have to change my mindset. Whatever mentality or mindset that I had prior to me making the decision that I want to make my finances better has to change. Because if I don't change how I think, I won't change how I do what I do. Your actions are a byproduct of how you think. The choices and decisions that you make are a byproduct of how you think. So if I want to do things differently, I have to think differently. And in order to do that, Got to change my mindset. So these are all things that are pivotal in the process of fixing my finances. The other thing that we got to do, step 3, is I have to challenge my beliefs about money. Like, what do I believe about money? What was I taught to believe about money? I'll just give you one common one that at least was a part of my generation as I was growing up. Women, in particularly in a certain community, were taught you need to have your own money. If you got a husband or not, you need to have your own money that you don't let nobody know about, so that if something go wrong, you can take care of yourself. That's a belief. Now, if you are involved in a relationship with a spouse and that spouse ends up finding out about the situation with money, it could create a distrust problem. And now you got an issue in your relationship that you don't have to have, all because you were inundated with a belief that someone said when you was 7, 8, 9 years old, and it was reinforced and was never challenged. So you got to challenge your beliefs. I use that as one example. Use another example. If you believe that money is power, then your attitude can be one that causes you to do things or causes you to respond to situations based on how much money you have or how much money you perceive someone else to have. These are all things that have to be challenged as it relates to your beliefs, because what you do with your money and the decisions that you make as it pertains to your life are going to be impacted by these beliefs. So then step 4 is to get organized, okay? So after we go through steps 1 through 3, acknowledge, get help, challenge your beliefs, okay? Now we got to get organized. You need to know and understand your full financial picture. How much money do you earn? You have to know that, okay? I ask people questions about how much money they earn, and it's amazing to me that they say about. What you mean about? You should know how much money you earn. It's not about. But I get those kind of responses. How much money is being taken out of your check before you receive it? And what is that money going to? You should know that. And that should be factored in to at least understanding your financial situation. Okay? Not only that, we figure out how much money is being taken out. What is that money being taken out for? You have money being taken out for all different types of insurances. Do you have money being taken out for, other things? Like, what is the money being taken out for? You have a specific reason as to why that money is being taken out, or is it just something you got set down with HR and you just start checking boxes? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? That's a part of being organized so that you can understand what kind of decisions you make. Okay? How much money is being given to you each pay period? After all, I have a client that has a salary of $184,000. But that client only receives about $6,700 a month. So that means they have a lot of money coming out of their paycheck before it comes into their possession. So I said, let's look at this. You should do the same thing. You should know how much money is coming out and why, and how much you're actually getting, because that's what you got to make decisions with. You can't make decisions off a $193,000 salary, because that ain't how much money you're getting in your hand. All these are things that are related to getting organized. Of course, we got to figure out what are your expenses. So how much money you got coming in? What are your expenses? Now, an expense is anything you spend money on. Expense is not just your mortgage. It's not just your car note. It's not just your utilities. An expense is anything that you spend money on. There are different categories of expenses. Some are obligated, some are non-obligated. But anything you spend money on is an expense. So you need to go through and figure out what your expenses are. Non-obligated expenses can be controlled. Obligated expenses, you may not be able to change them because there may be negative consequences, like a car note or a mortgage or daycare for your children. These are things that you have to understand in the process of getting organized and making decisions. And then you got to figure out what your actual income is. Now, I'm going to tell you a little secret. I normally don't reveal this in a public venue like this because I normally do it in the form of a question when I'm talking to an audience, a live audience that is, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time. If I ask you what your income is, what is your response? Is it my bring home pay? Is it my salary? Is it what I get after taxes? What is your answer to what your income is? If your answer is any of those things, you're incorrect. Income, how I define it, is money that comes in to your possession that does not have to go back out. If it has to go back out, it's not coming in, it's passing through. Give you an example. If you have a mortgage or you pay a rent, and that mortgage or rent is $1,000 a month, you signed a legal document that said this amount of money every month belongs to this creditor. Which means if you get paid $2,000 a month, $1,000 of that money belongs to somebody else. It's legally not your money because you signed for it. And if you don't believe that, don't pay the mortgage and see what happens. The institution can foreclose and repossess the house for you not giving them the money that legally belongs to them. So I define income as that which comes in to your possession and does not have to go back out. So what is your income? Once you figure that out, is there a plan for how your money will accomplish what you want it to accomplish? This is a part of getting organized. If you have no plan, then what happens is you are like a piece of paper in the wind. If a strong wind comes by and blows, that's the paper going that way. If a strong wind comes by and says, ooh, this new product is on sale that you like or that has got your attention, and you got money in your pocket and you don't have no plan for it, that's what happens with that money. And people live like that on a regular basis. So you have to have a plan for what you want your money to accomplish. Have you established what your priorities are? If you don't, then again, same thing is going to happen. We are bombarded all the time with media commercials and infomercials and information, and our coworkers and relatives and friends talking about what they're spending money on, talking about the latest and the greatest things, right? You got commercials telling you, don't file your taxes and wait for the IRS to send you your money. No, you can get your tax return in advance for a fee. They're going to charge you money to get your money earlier than what you would otherwise, or when you would otherwise get it. And those messages are coming at us all the time. Radio, advertisement, pop-ups on your computer, pop-ups on your social media. It's all around us. So we're being conditioned to spend. We're not being conditioned to prioritize. So you have to take a conscious effort or make a conscious effort to prioritize what you're going to spend your money on and establish those priorities. Do you have a budget? This is a part of getting organized. there has to be a budget because you have a limited amount of money. So you just can't spend whatever you want to spend anytime you want to spend it because you have a limited amount of money. And you have things that you need to have taken care of. So do you have a budget? And then do you have a system for how your money is managed and accounted for? If you don't have a system, then again, you are subjecting yourself to influences that are going to move you emotionally to spend money and do things with money that's not necessarily going to help you to accomplish what you want to accomplish, and in particularly position you for the long term, okay? So the last thing we got to do is learn how to make financial decisions. We have to assess our spending situations. Should always make an assessment, determine what the pros and the cons are. We have to develop the patience to save in advance instead of paying on the back end. Let's talk about vacation for a second. If you know that you want to take a vacation, you can plan for it in advance. Even if you don't know where you want to go, you can say, okay, you know what? I know next summer I'm going to want to take a vacation with the family. We always do. Let me set a budget. And that budget is, say, $2,000. So I'm going to put away X amount of money every month for the next 10 months so that I can pay for this vacation in advance and not put it on a credit card and then pay it on the back end. I mean, think about it. If you can put it on the credit card and then make payments on the back end, then you can make payments on the front end and don't have to pay the interest and make the decision about where you're going to go based on establishing that budget. That's called being organized. We're not conditioned to think that way, but it's what we need to do if we want to achieve financial success in a maximum capacity. Always consider if there's a more cost-effective alternative, okay? Whenever we're looking at situations, we need to look at if there is a more cost-effective way to do it as opposed to the initial way that we're introduced to. Never let wants take precedence over needs. How do I make better financial decisions? I don't let a want become more important than a need. I have to be willing to count the cost and the potential short-term and long-term effect of this decision. You know, if I do this now, what kind of impact is this going to have on me later on down the road? We don't think about that. But I can tell you that in all my years of living, I have not had one instance where I've asked a person who had been around for a while, if you could go back and do some things differently as it relates to your finances and what you did with your money, would you? And without exception, every person has always told me yes. So all I'm saying is make the effort to try to count the cost in advance of what the potential long-term effect will be. Make sure that your priorities and goals have been considered. When you are talking about making decisions, what are your priorities? What are your goals? Have you taken them into consideration? Have they been accounted for? If they have, and you have the discretionary money left over to do something else that you want to do, fine, go do it. But at least go through the process. And then don't sacrifice long-term benefit for short-term pleasures and gratification. I can't tell you how many people I meet with who are ill prepared for retirement at 50, 55, 60 years old, but throughout the course of their life, they always had a Mercedes. They always had a BMW. They always had a luxury car. In other words, they prioritize their image to the extent that now 30 years down the road, that extra $20,000, $25,000 that they paid for the car, not to include the interest that they paid in payments, has now cost them potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in money saved for retirement and the growth of interest. So in closing, if you can accept this and understand that money is a resource, if you understand why people get into financial difficulties because of lack of discipline, not being organized, not being patient, and all the things that were talked about in session 2. And you can understand the need to get organized, get help, acknowledge your shortcomings. Then you can fix your financial issues by understanding that money ain't the problem. What we do with it is. Look forward to seeing you in session 4.